Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a Q&A. So I took some questions that you guys asked on Instagram, on my Instagram at veganbelow0, and also on YouTube, on a YouTube post about what kind of career questions you have. And I left this really broad in general. I'm going to be breaking the video down a bit into category because I got so many questions and I really want to answer as many of them as I can. So 1, choosing a major; 2, schools and research, questions that come up when you're in your degree; 3, finding a job and life after school; 4, actually at work and questions that come up in the workplace; and then 5, work-life questions. I would say the most questions came from how to choose a major and actually how to find a job. Maybe some of you guys will just want to put this video on while you're on your commute so you can just listen to me talk about some of these ideas. That might be the best way to watch these videos. I have a goal of, by the end of 2019, getting to 10,000 subscribers. So if you want to help support me on that goal, if you could just click the subscribe button below if you'd like. So I'm going to start with 1, choosing a major. I want to go into ornithology, but is that limiting my options too much? As I said in my majors video, which I'll link to above because this majors video is relevant for a lot of these questions. Generally, I would recommend for a bachelor's degree, you go a little bit more general. I would recommend doing like a wildlife biology or an ecology type of degree and then specializing in ornithology or whatever your specialty is at a later stage. You don't want to specialize way too early and cut yourself off from too many career options, especially since that sometimes job options can be very limited and usually are very competitive. So if you don't have any ornithology jobs available, you really want to be able to market yourself for more general ecology type of courses. So if you do want to specialize in ornithology, which if you guys don't already know is studying birds, I would recommend you do that via internships and experience or through research at either research during your undergrad or research through a master's and a PhD degree. By the time that you get to your master's and PhD, you really have to specialize in most cases. I would recommend choosing a thesis for those grad degrees that relates to birds if that's what you want to do, but then it still keeps your degree name as ecology or wildlife biology, so you can market yourself if there is no ornithology jobs available. How did you know what to do? When you're stuck between 2 career paths, what do you do? So I actually just made a video about this, in my new video, how to choose a career when you are lost. I'll link to that one above. I'll scale that video down. When I'm between 2 career paths, in the past, this is what I've done. 1, think about what you want your life to look like. Do you want to be working, say, in wildlife biology in the field, studying animals? Maybe you want to be a vet. Think about, do you want to be in a clinic setting? Think about what the actual jobs would look like, the 9-to-5 day would be like for both of those careers, and which one appeals to you more and is more realistic for your lifestyle. I would also say which one has the best career options for the area that you live in, and then which one makes you the most excited when you think about one day being that career field. Hopefully all 3 of those can help you sort out between 2 careers what you want to do. I'm confused about the differences between wildlife science, wildlife healthcare, and animal science. Can you please elaborate? So wildlife science is going to be similar to wildlife biology because biology is a study of living things. Wildlife are living things. So wildlife science and wildlife biology are going to be very similar. You typically see wildlife biology listed more, but sometimes you'll see wildlife science. That is a technical degree focusing on the science of wildlife. I mean, that seems like a stupid answer, but just think of that. And then wildlife healthcare is going to be focused more on veterinary side of things. So that's going to require usually more education, and you're going to be going down that track to be a wildlife veterinarian or wildlife veterinarian assistant. So it is more hands-on with wildlife, and it is less about the research and the studying of animals than it is about actually treating the animals. And then animal science. Animal science may seem really similar to wildlife science, but in practice, animal science typically is referring to agricultural animals. So that's going to be studying cows, chickens, horses, the more agricultural animals, their health, they're taking care of them, their feed and all of that. It also does bring in wild animals as well too, but an animal science degree focuses much more on agricultural animals than a wildlife biology degree. Can I combine geography with biology or even forensic science with biology? So Geography and biology, yes, absolutely. A lot of times the ecology degree is actually housed under the overall school of geography. Applied ecology also too usually falls within a geography type of school. I would say geography and biology is best combined via applied ecology. So when you're actually looking at the real world ecology and less research and more actual working with consulting companies to determine the wildlife range and whether it falls within a specific project, or working with GIS to go through environmental data. So those two can definitely be combined pretty well, especially if you know GIS. Forensic science and biology can be combined for sure, because a lot of forensic science goes off of biological concepts, but I would say forensic science and ecology is a little bit harder to combine. I can't think of any readily available jobs that would combine the both of those. Which one should I choose? Wildlife vet or wildlife biologists? I love animals and studying. So wildlife vet is a totally different career than a wildlife biologist. So as a wildlife biologist, my day-to-day is working in the field, observing animals, making recommendations on protecting endangered species. A wildlife veterinarian's day-to-day is going to be maybe also in the field too, but it will be more of a clinical setting. So you're working hands-on with animals, caring for them, maybe doing surgery, maybe researching the effect of disease on deer, something like that. Wildlife veterinarian is going to require much more schooling than wildlife biologist. So if you like studying, it could be a good path to go down. But I would think the hands-on versus the studying and the research side would be the main differences between the two. How was the transition from pre-med to wildlife biology, and did you feel disadvantaged? So I would say for me, the transition was pretty smooth because I transitioned so early. I had only done my general eds at that point, so a lot of the general education courses for pre-med were so similar to wildlife biology and ecology that I was able to transition smoothly, and there was only an extra few classes I needed to take. And since they were both science, biology type of majors, I didn't feel like there was a big gap in learning. I did find the lifestyle is quite different, and the people I was working with, I much preferred in the ecology major, my classmates, than like the cutthroat world of pre-med. So I didn't feel disadvantaged. Would a minor in bioinformatics be useful for a degree in ecology? Yes, definitely. Bioinformatics combines biology and computer science, math and statistics. This is something that's not always taught a ton in a general ecology course. So to be able to have that specialty in bioinformatics is going to be a huge benefit to finding a job, especially if you are looking at jobs in things like making ecological models or programming in R. A bioinformatics minor is going to be really useful. Do you know anyone who's tried environmental law, and what does that route look like? So there's generally two different routes with environmental law. One is going to be doing like a bachelor's or a master's degree in environmental law, and those kind of jobs are going to mostly be like policy and government types of jobs. So like working to create policy on environmental sustainability, wildlife protection, things along those lines. And then also there is going and getting your law degree and becoming an environmental lawyer, which is much more education and can often be much more difficult to complete that whole career path. If you want to go down the lawyer path, make sure you really are ready for those years of studying, that cost of school. And if you're going down the environmental law path, I would only do environmental law specifically if you're really not interested in the technical side, because I've worked for government creating policies with an ecology degree, and I was able to learn the policy and the law side on top of my degree in the actual working world. So I would prefer probably getting an ecology degree and then just going down the policy route if that's what you want to do and you don't want to be a lawyer. Ecology versus zoology, which degree is more employable? Ecology would generally be more employable because it's more broad. Zoology is a very specific degree, especially at the bachelor's level. It can specialize you way too early. So between those two degrees, I would go to ecology to have a wider variety of jobs available for you. Is it possible to have a good career with a diploma in conservation biology? Yep. Yeah, a conservation biology degree is a really good stepping stone for a technical biologist job, a policy job, or a planning job. How can I get involved with the field of ethology, and are there actually jobs for that? I want to observe wild animals and make discoveries about their behavior. An animal behavior type of degree, I would recommend that you go for more of a wildlife biology or an ecology type of degree, because that's going to sound a lot better on resumes for a more broad variety of jobs, when an animal behavior degree specifically is really corralling you into that one specific field. And when you say, I want to observe wild animals and make discoveries about their behavior, you can do that within the realms of a wildlife biology or a ecology degree, especially if you want to make discoveries, you want to do research. I would say most wildlife biologists are really looking at the behavior of the animal in their research. So I would recommend that you do that through a wildlife biology or even an ecology type of post-grad field. Would you recommend majoring in zoology, ethology, wildlife biology, or ecology for someone wanting to work with animals? I would recommend, out of all of those, wildlife biology or ecology, or zoology too. I would, for the same reasons that I've already talked about, I would go more towards the wildlife biology and ecology to keep your options more open for jobs, because the jobs are so limited in those ethology and animal behavior type of fields. If I major in environmental science, will that give me a broad variety of work, and what kind of work? Environmental science is one of the most broad majors that you can major in, so it's definitely going to give you a huge variety of work. I talk more about the type of work available in environmental science in my 3 videos that I've done on careers for environmental science majors that I'll link to above and also put in the description box below. Is it smarter to major in environmental science or major in something more specific? I would recommend that you major in something a little bit more broad for your bachelor's degree, because a bachelor's degree in general isn't going to make you qualified enough to be an expert on primate behavior, for example. You're really going to need a master's or a PhD to consider yourself an expert. So there's no point in going and trying to really specialize that far at the bachelor's level. I'm looking into a course that is a bachelor's in applied science in climate and the environment with a 12 to 16 month co-op. Is this a good program, and what are your thoughts? Americans might not know a co-op is like an internship that we do in Canada. I would say this sounds like a really good program. A bachelor's in applied science in the environment is a pretty broad, usable major, and I definitely think the 12 to 16 month co-op is a really good idea. The more experience you can get, if you come out of your degree with a 1.5 years of experience full time, that's going to really boost your resume when you graduate. I want to help lower people's climate footprint and save the planet. What do you recommend I study? That sounds more like you're going down the realm of like environmental policy, sustainability specialists. So I would recommend you do something like environmental science, sustainability, natural resource management. Those majors can be really limited depending on what school you go to, so you might need to do something more general like environmental science. I'm confused if I want to study agricultural science, horticulture, or botany. I have an associate's degree in teaching. So agricultural science is, like I said before, it's going to be really focused on farms, farm animals. Horticulture is going to be more of a focus on like landscaping and really applied botany. I don't even know if that's a word, but and then botany is going to kind of put you in the career path to become a botanist, which could be a very limiting field, especially at the undergrad level. Many people who are employed botanists have a master's and a PhD, so I would think about that before you go down the botany route. The first 2 degrees that you mentioned, though, you should be able to find a job in those with only a bachelor's degree. Which university is the best for environmental science in Canada? We have a lot of really good universities in Canada, but I would recommend looking into UBC in British Columbia, University of Victoria, University of Toronto, University of Alberta, and McGill. Is restoration ecology a good major? Restoration ecology is a little bit more specific than general ecology. However, I still really would recommend this one, as we're getting more contaminated sites and more like oil spills devastating areas. The need for remediation and restoration ecologists is pretty big, and it's going up more and more in demand. This is one of the cases where I think it would be a really good idea to major in this kind of specialized field. Next category is school and research. So what things should you do in university to have a good chance of getting a job after graduation? Internships, co-ops, work experience, volunteer work is my #1 recommendation for people in university. I would also recommend networking and working on your resume early. So if you start building your resume in school, that's going to help you get a job after graduation.
How do you get a research grant or funding for dissertations?
Since I didn't do my PhD, I didn't get a ton of experience doing this. but from what I gather is going to be doing some research online. Many government organizations will fund those and have calls for proposals for research projects that might fall under the scope of their grant ability to give grants, and also reaching out to professors and other students in your lab to see what they're doing for funding and see if you can apply to some of the grants that they're doing. Can you choose a specific area to explore in school, like only mammals or only insects? So with wildlife biology, typically specializing on a specific animal is going to be done either in an internship or research experience in your bachelor's degree, or as a subject of your thesis of your master's or your PhD. So yeah, you usually can choose a specific area to study in at some point. What skills should I have when I switch into ecology for a master's degree when I've majored in a bachelor's degree in something else? I would say the skills that you should have is building that science brain. So starting to think of things via the scientific method, thinking of biases, thinking of what is significance in your results, thinking of things from more of a scientific brain, especially if you're switching from more of like an arts type of degree, as well as staying really organized, because science classes are really dang hard and you really got to put aside the time to study. Being a good writer and being able to convey your thoughts that might be really complicated in a simple or simple-ish way for writing your papers. Do you recommend doing an internship and school in the same semester? So I did an internship in school in the same semester, but a lot of people just can't do it, especially if you have a really big course load and your internship is making you work 30 hours a week. It's going to be really difficult. If your internship has lower hours or it's unpaid, I would recommend doing it at the same time as school. But if your internship is paid and they're willing to give you like 30 to 40 hours, and you can afford to live on that, and you don't think you can do that at the same time as school, then I don't think there's any problem with taking a semester off if it's really the right, perfect opportunity for you. What should you do in high school? So I actually made a whole video on this, what to do in high school for environmental scientists. I will link to that one above. That one goes way more into detail than I can right now. But basically the answers are get good grades and volunteer at animal or ecology type of places. If I get a research grant, can I pay myself a salary out of that? Totally depends on the grant, and there will be some grants available where you can compensate yourself for your own time. Generally, you can find some way to pay yourself a salary doing your PhD in ecology. Okay, those were all of my questions related to school and choosing a major. So let's talk about the questions around finding a job first. Can you give me some tips on how to look for and find a job after graduation? I would recommend going through the job search websites that I'm going to link in the description below. It was from a blog of a lady who compiled all the wildlife job search websites. Going through the job search websites, building a resume that is really clear, has no spelling mistakes, and uses a lot of action verbs, and getting that reviewed by someone, and also incorporating all of the experience that you have, even if that experience is within school, like a school project or an ecology lab, putting that all into your resume to really beef it up as much, at least in the beginning stages when you're looking for your first job. Do you think usajobs.com is a good place to apply for jobs? I don't know if I should use it. So usajobs.com is the job website for people applying for federal jobs. So if you are looking for federal jobs or are interested and open to federal jobs, such as jobs in a national park, that's pretty much the only way that you can apply for those jobs. So yes, use it, but also look at other job search websites outside of USA Jobs to get the full breadth of jobs outside of the federal government. Do you think in the future there will be more competition for jobs due to the budget of the government? The environment is now a political issue. So yes, when you have a government in place that does not prioritize the environment and reduces environmental laws, you are going to have less environmental jobs. However, we can't predict the future where the government's going to go. We don't always know if the government is going to not prioritize the environment. Just be prepared that when there is a change of government with lower environmental standards, that's going to mean lower demand for jobs in our field. How long did it take you to get your job in wildlife biology? So I worked in wildlife biology when I was actually in university, but if we're talking about like my first full-time job only studying wildlife biology, It took me quite a while. I would say about 3 years after graduation until I got a job specifically in wildlife. However, in those 3 years, I was working in ecology and non-wildlife type of work. And to find my first ecology/environmental science related job, it took me about 6 months, but I also moved to a new country during that time and I was working on a temporary visa, so it could be much more, much less, depending on your personal situation. What are some types of office jobs for biologists and ecologists? So office jobs would be in environmental planning, applying for like wildlife permits, mapping, building ecological models, creating policy, writing reports on wildlife, and maybe writing public policy and conservation policy in order to help protect endangered species. What are your tips for what to put on a resume for plant biologists? I would recommend that you put any sort of work experience you have, any volunteer experience you have, and then also anything from school, such as labs you might have taken, classes that you might have taken that are really relevant, school projects, stuff like that. I would also recommend plant biologists, they typically want to see field experience. So make sure you highlight any field experience that you might have. Is it possible to become a wildlife biologist in a foreign country? And if so, how long can you stay? Yes, it is. That's what I did. How long you can stay depends on the visa that you're on, whether you are a citizen or a permanent resident, how long your job might sponsor you. I did a full video about working abroad in environmental science. I will link to that one above and then in the description box below, called Work Abroad in Environmental Science, where I go through the different types of visas and the realities of working abroad as a biologist. What is the interview process for wildlife jobs and do they test your knowledge? So this is a really good question that I haven't answered yet on this channel. So generally you have a phone screening, a first interview, and sometimes a second interview. The phone screening, they'll just ask you really basic questions like how many years of experience do you have? They usually won't ask any technical questions. Your first interview and your second interview may have a technical component, and I would be prepared for there to be one. What is your familiarity with local flora and fauna might be the extent of the question, or they might actually show you photos of like tracks and ask you to ID them. So I would definitely be prepared if there is a technical component, but you can also ask if there's going to be a technical component if you want to. That doesn't usually penalize you or anything. It just allows you to be prepared. Is finding a job competitive? What made you move? And was it the lack of jobs? I made a whole video about if finding a job is competitive that I'll link to above and below in the description. I did not move because there was a lack of jobs in California. I moved for personal reasons. But yeah, generally it is quite competitive to find a job in this field, and that's why everyone can't find a job who graduates in this field. I have job experience studying plants and pollinators. How would you go about applying to seasonal jobs with other species when you've had no experience with that species? So if you are in the entry-level phase, I wouldn't worry too much about this, as if you are applying for a job and studying wolves, a lot of times they won't expect you to have experience studying wolves before, because that would limit them so much on the applicants that they're getting. But generally, like a carnivore type of job, we'll want to see that you have studied carnivores in the past. So if you want to move on to a different field of animals, just make sure you do a bit of your research to bring to the interview stage and highlight your research in bees, for example, and maybe studying bees brought you out in the field and started getting you thinking about like habitat use of what other animals were in the area, because that might have affected the pollinators. Try to bring in as much as you can and spin your experience in one species and think about how it's going to help you study another species in the future. How can you find out if you are really supposed to go into environmental science if there are no jobs or internships in your area to try it out? The first thing I would think about is if there are no jobs in environmental science in your area, what are you going to do when you graduate? Like, is this a realistic field for you to even go into? Are you planning on moving, and are you able to move to a place where there is more jobs? I would consider about whether this is the right major first. Second, try to do jobs that are as similar to the work environment as you can. So if you want to be a field biologist, maybe taking jobs doing like trail maintenance or like landscaping or something outside might help you decide if that's the type of work environment that you want to work in the future. After getting a bachelor's degree, how much experience is expected by those who are hiring, and how much experience did you have when you graduated? This is really annoying, but a lot of employers expect you to have like 1 to 3 years of experience when you graduate for entry-level jobs, which I think is super silly because no one has 3 years of experience when they graduate with a degree. But generally, employers expect you to have some sort of experience, maybe a year or so. There's like a weird gap between graduating and like a junior wildlife biologist job, where the junior job will require like 3 years of experience. So what do you do in between? You have to try to find the jobs that are really entry level, even below the junior wildlife job. So for example, my first job, I was an administrator that was assessing data on water wells and like studying water well reports if mining had affected water wells in the area. And so that administrator job only required like less than a year of experience, which I had. And then once I got that counted as another year of experience. And then I was able to kind of move up, and finally I got like a junior wildlife position. And when I graduated, I had about a year and a half of experience. Is there a preference in which type of experience to get? Field versus office, maybe animal versus plant? This depends on what you want to do, but my experience was I had a lot of field experience, and that seemed more wanted by employers if you are wanting to become a technical specialist. But if you are wanting to do something like policy or planning, the office experience is going to be more important. So it depends on your career goals. And animal versus plant, same thing. If you want to do botany, of course, plant experience is going to be more important. And if you want to do wildlife, getting that animal experience is more important. I have a degree in biotechnology and want to pursue wildlife science. What are good universities and the best countries to go to? You're definitely going to want to go back for another degree, I would say, to get into wildlife biology. So good universities to go to depend on your country. Some of the top countries I've seen for wildlife biology is the US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Resource-focused industries such as like Norway are going to employ the most wildlife biologists. And then best universities, the best way you can do that, because there's just so many across the world, is I would do a bit of like Google research depending on the country you want to go to, like best universities, wildlife biology in New Zealand, and then really look at their course offerings, how many labs and environmental science courses that they are able to offer you, the type of majors they're able to offer you, and then look at some reviews from students that have gone to those schools. What are the job opportunities for someone with a PhD in entomology in Canada? I love how specific some of these questions are. Entomology in Canada is a very, very specialized field. However, I know off the top of my head, there are government jobs that would love to see someone with a degree in entomology, because we have such a big agriculture industry and a lot of pests and insect diseases. I'm thinking of like the ones affecting the pine beetles in the Rockies. Having that specialized experience in insects is going to be massively beneficial for government jobs. I don't see there being a huge segment of private jobs available for that PhD. So I would really focus in on the government jobs, or maybe the big consulting companies jobs might need like one specialist in entomology. Now we're going to move to the next category, at work. Questions you guys have about being in the workplace in wildlife biology. So how to ask for more money from your employer. I love this question because I always do this when I get a new job. I'm always asking for more money, and you have to negotiate as much as you can, and don't ever be afraid to negotiate. The worst they're usually going to say is no, and if they withdraw a job offer for negotiating, that's kind of a red flag. So don't be afraid to ask, even when you think it's non-negotiable. Sometimes they'll just budge a little bit, or if they won't give you more money, they might give you more benefits or something like that. So the best way to ask for more money is to look at what other people in your field, in your city, are being paid to do a similar job, and bring those labor market statistics to show your employer that you are being underpaid. Is show what you have done and what your skills are of why you deserve a better pay. Do not say, because Sally over there is making more money, I want more money. You say, well, here's what biologists make in my area, here's what I'm making, and here's all the ways that I benefit your organization through all of these, maybe emails you've gotten from people thanking you and saying you're doing such a good job. Anything you can bring to the table is going to be the best option. And always say you want more than what you actually want to receive, because generally you'll meet somewhere in the middle. Do you typically feel like you have enough time to complete tasks at work, or are you pressed for time a lot and feeling rushed? I usually feel rushed most of the time, because just the way that I work, I generally put stuff off until the last minute, and then suddenly the deadline's tomorrow and I have to work overtime to do it. It depends on how you manage your time, and it depends on your employer. Generally, a lot of scientists aren't getting a lot of time to do their work. A lot of times you are feeling pretty rushed. What has been your most rewarding experience working as a biologist? This is such a good question. I would say one of my most rewarding experiences is anytime that I see an animal being helped by what I have done. That could really be like when I was working on doing like the nest sweeps before construction for pipeline projects. So I would go out and I would find the nests before they bulldozed the entire area. So when I found a little nest and I was able to be like, hey, you need to stay away until the fledglings come out of this nest, that's insanely rewarding to know that I saved those animals. As well as when I was working in nonprofits and animal sanctuaries, there's so many stories I have about saving an animal that I still think about it and still makes me happy. So those are my most rewarding experiences, when I actually get to see with my own two eyes that I helped an animal. Do you encounter a lot of wild animals in the field? And if so, is it dangerous, and what do you do? So, I mean, I've been out on bear den sweeps where I'm looking for dangerous wild animals. So yeah, I've encountered a lot. I've seen a lot of bears. I've seen, a lot of carnivores. It can be dangerous, yes, but any job that knows their safety is supposed to send you out with at least one other person to be there. And a lot of times these carnivores that have the potential to hurt you are not interested in hurting you. There are more injuries and deaths due to cows than there is wolves attacking people. So it's incredibly rare for a lot of these animals to hurt you. That said, it does happen, especially with bears. There are bear attacks every so often. It's really safety in numbers. Some of the other safety precautions I do is carry a satellite phone so that if I am hurt or in a sticky situation, I could call for help, call for a helicopter rescue, having a second person with me. With snakes and stuff like that, wearing snake gaiters or personal protective equipment specific to that species. For insects, it could be bug spray. So there are a lot of safety precautions, and while it can be scary sometimes, I've never been in too many situations where I think that my life is immediately at risk. I have been more afraid of people. Almost all the scary situations I've had in the field 100% revolved around maybe people threatening me or being scared of people than it has animals. I've been scared of run-ins with poachers, terrorist groups, when I was working in the jungle, and men that I was working with that I didn't feel comfortable with in the field. That was 100% scarier to me than any wild animal. Now let's talk about work life and some of the questions that are a bit more outside of the realm of careers. So how does your career affect your relationships? So I have created some of the best friends in the field and working with my coworkers 24/7, and created a few enemies, but it can be hard to maintain relationships at home. So when I find when I'm in the field for long periods of time, my personal relationships suffer. Yeah, it's tough, and you really have to work to maintain those relationships when you're away from home a lot. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, and what advice do you have? Yes, I experience imposter syndrome all the time. I still feel like I'm pretending to be a scientist and I have no idea what I'm doing, and sometimes when I get called on as a technical expert, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not a technical expert. Like everyone's gonna know that I'm faking it. It's really normal. It happens to almost everyone. I think imposter syndrome is much more of a reality for some people when they don't see scientists that look like them. It does get really internalized, and you might not see yourself as a scientist. So I think looking at a wide variety of diverse scientists is one of the best ways to combat imposter syndrome. Follow some diverse scientists on social media and expand your horizons on what you think a scientist it looks like, and also having confidence in yourself. I have a folder on my computer this sounds so stupid, where I save like emails when someone sent to me like, you did a really good job, or some sort of like nice thing that someone's done, or maybe a photo of me in the field that I really like, into like a little folder on my computer, positive, upbeat folder. So when I feel like I'm an imposter and I'm fake, I can go through and read those kind notes. So maybe you could try that. What is the solution for speaking out against government decisions which might be harmful to the environment? The best things you can do is vote in the right politicians, make lifestyle changes so you're not supporting harmful industries, and write letters and call your politicians and let them know what's happening. What are the ways that scientists can earn a passive income? I'm going to link to a video by Science Finance. I think it's like side hustles for scientists. Can we add you on LinkedIn? I don't have a LinkedIn page, sorry. Okay, those were all of the questions that I got from you guys in a 12-hour period. Thank you for all of you who watched till the end. I know it's a lot. Thank you all who submitted your questions. And if you guys like this video and you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comment section below. If there's a lot of demand for more Q&A videos, I really enjoy doing them because I feel like they're more interactive. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time.